Welcome to Hello Me, It's Me, Vulnerable AF, a podcast hosted by Nikki D. Lovely. That's really just her diary disguised as a podcast, but who cares? You're here for it. Join in as she addresses her self-reflections on life, love, and dating, and gives us all the tea by being more vulnerable than she ever has, with herself and the world. So let's get started in today's episode with Nikki D. Lovely, already in progress.
All right. Hello and welcome to another episode of Hello Me. It's me, vulnerable as F. It is actually very late at night, and it has been a while since I did a podcast, and I apologize for that. It has been one of those moments in time where a lot is going on, where I'm trying to figure out what's my next move, what's my next step. I don't know if a lot of you guys know, but I know I've talked about this. I moved to California from Louisiana, and now it is time to make the decision of whether or not I'm going to stay here or move back to Louisiana or go somewhere else. And although the thought I have to be out of here by August 1st or by the end of August, but preferably August 1st. The thought is daunting sometimes. But to be honest, even though I'm not 100% sure what my next move is going to be, I'm looking forward to figuring it out. I gave myself 3 months to kind of, do the work and figure it out. But because I do have a looming move, it has been heavy on my mind, on top of, new relationships and taking care of kids and having a new job. So it's just been a lot. So I appreciate those of you who have continued to support this podcast, who have continued to support me, and I'd like to welcome you back. So tonight's episode is a little personal. I just had one of those rare heart-tugging conversations with my daughter over dinner. The kind that reminds you why you do what you do as a parent. So we talked about sacrifice and about putting dreams on hold, which was interesting because my daughter asked a lot of questions. And she asked me, if you had $1 million, what would you be doing with your life? I guess besides teaching and raising kids. But on top of, talking about dreams being put on hold, we talked about what it really means to try to do better than what we had growing up. And I told her that I always wanted to make sure that I was available for her at all times. So it was okay for me to put my dreams on hold because my dreams, which were to be in the television industry, requires a lot of man hours. There would be times I would be on set for 19 hours at a time, and it's kind of hard to raise children, especially 2 girls, by yourself as a single mom when you're working 19-hour days on set and you're not getting paid that much. So I always wanted to be a producer, I always wanted to be a writer, but I kind of put those dreams on hold to have them. And my daughter said tonight, maybe when I'm 21, which is in about 7 years, you'll be able to fulfill those dreams. It's funny because, maybe I can fulfill those dreams in 7 years. But the question is, are those dreams that I'm really wanting to fulfill? I haven't really sat down and mapped that out yet. But while I'm talking about that, let's talk about dreams and not fulfilling dreams and what do you do when you don't fulfill those dreams because you're parenting and because you're wanting to be a good parent? Yeah, so let's get into it. All right, so as I said earlier, I was having a sit-down conversation with my daughter, and she thanked me. She said, "Mom, you're such a good mom. Thank you for putting aside your dreams to be present for us." And I looked at her and I said, "Of course, that's something that I really didn't have a choice." And she goes, "Oh no, but you did. You did have a choice." And I think what I'm realizing is, for me, I did not have a choice. For me, I always wanted to be a great parent for my kids. I always wanted to be available for them because one of the things that I did not have growing up were emotionally available parents. I had great parents who were financially sound. We were middle class growing up. My dad was a doctor. Both were college educated. My actually was a CPA. She worked full she worked full to part-time most of my childhood. And then she went back to school to get her master's as well. And she was dealing with a lot of stuff herself, raising 3 kids and having to take care of my dad when he went to school, then her going back to school, her going to work. It's a lot. I say this sometimes that there are a lot of single moms in relationships. And I sometimes feel like my mom felt like she was doing everything alone because my dad's job was so high profile. So she didn't get a lot of help with the kids. And I saw that. My dad was not emotionally available, mainly because he was doing so much with work, but he was also kind of old school. He was the type that he just poured into his work. I didn't really have conversations with him growing up. I was talked at a lot. I do remember that. We were taught a lot. We were taught a lot about our culture, about growing up Black. My dad's from Mississippi, so he wanted to make sure that we always knew where we came from. So he was very adamant about making sure that we watched videos and we saw the movies and we had the conversations when it came to the politics of living in Mississippi and being a Black child, being raised in Mississippi. But I think when it came to our emotions and how we felt, that was always missing. There was always a communication breakdown. Now, I did have my mom. I feel like I was always, able to go to her and talk to her about most things. But then again, at the same standpoint, I also know that she also had her own things going on as well. So there was always that. And I remember being a child and always wondering, why is it okay for me to go outside of my house? And I feel great talking to people who are not my parents, who are not people in my family. Like, it always seemed easier to talk to other people than it was to talk to my own parents. And I always felt like that was a problem. And so when I had my children, I said, I will never have it where they're not able to come talk to me. I don't care what I have to do. And I did make some sacrifices. I have always worked from home to a certain extent. There was a time when I did work in retail because I wanted some extra money to make sure I was able to buy clothes for my daughter. And I will give a lot of credit to my parents for helping me out as a single mom. I was able to live with them for years, and the fact that I hate to say, I even came back with my youngest daughter at one point thinking that I had moved out, and then, coming up on some hard times and asking to move back in and staying a little bit longer than I really wanted to. But all that being said, I did that because I didn't want my kids living in less than ideal circumstances. There was a time where I was like, well, maybe I can just live in my car. Maybe I can just live in a van with my kids, But then I was thinking, no, that's not the life that I want to raise my kids in. So I did the hard part and I knocked on my dad's door. I went out to eat with my father and I was like, do you mind if I come home? And I feel like I know I stayed longer than they would have wanted me to. But it's also very hard raising 2 young women and by yourself. And that was never my goal. I was married originally and that didn't work out. Those who know my story, I've talked about it before. And my ex-husband was diagnosed with schizophrenia and I was just kind of left on my own. So you do what you can with the hand that you're dealt. But even with the hand that I was dealt, I knew that my major was film and television and I couldn't work 19-hour days. So I needed a plan B. The plan B was, to take odd jobs and also to start my own business on the side so I could always have money and to do for them. And thankfully I had parents who never questioned where I was going to live with my kids. The rest was on me, but for the most part, they were always really good about at least, not having to worry about a roof over our head in California, which, is very hard. We survived. We did it. So I will say, there was a big difference between me raising my kids and my parents raising us. So my parents were more financially sound than I have been personally by myself because it's just me. It's just me with 2 kids. My mom and my dad both worked. They had each other. They had 2 incomes coming in, so they've been able to save up a lot more. It's just been a lot harder for me, mainly because it is just me and I have not had any help from the other side. We'll just call that other side the other side. I have not had any help from the other side for the most part. And I said that that would never deter me from being available for my kids emotionally. And I will say that I am proud of myself. My kids have given me the accolades and the approval. They have basically told me, yes, mom, you're a good mom. There was this one time I'll never forget. My oldest daughter invited me to parent day at her junior high school. And I showed up and there was not one single parent on campus. And I remember thinking, is it parent day today? Did I come on the wrong day? Like, what's going on? So I went back to the office and I was like, I don't see any other parents on campus. What's going on? And she goes, well, the students didn't invite their parents. I was like, well, what do you mean the students didn't invite their parents? Was there not something that went around that let the parents know that today was parent day? And she said, no, we give the kids the opportunity to actually give their parents the invitation. And if their parents don't get an invitation, then their parents just don't come. And when I tell you, I'm not exaggerating, that there was no other parent on campus besides me that day. And my daughter just showcased me around school and introduced me to all her friends. Like, this is my mom. And we went to lunch and she's like, this is my mom. And we went to her art class at the end of the day and she was still introducing me to people. I was the only parent on that campus, at least that I saw that day. People probably think I'm exaggerating. I'm not. It was really an eye-opening experience for me that I was the only parent that was invited. And it's one of those things where, you kind of feel like you get cool points for being the only parent invited. Like, to this day, like, I feel like I get some cool points for showing up to that. But yeah, I think that was proof that I did what I set out to do, and that's to always be present for my daughters, to be present and be rewarded for being present, Well, let's talk about the hard truth when money isn't enough when it comes to parenting, because I think that is one of the other struggles besides being emotionally available for our children. Having enough money financially to help our kids grow up in the environments that we want them to grow up in can be a challenge. Some of the challenges that I face, besides the money aspect, is, of course, being the single mom and doing everything by yourself. I don't claim to be that, I am mom all the way, okay? I can never feel that void of daddy coming to pick up their daughter or daughter-daddy dance. I will never say I'm mom and dad. I'm mom. I'm trying to be the best mom I can be. I also know that there is a void of dad that is missing in my kids' lives. And that's something that I cannot feel for them, no matter how hard I try. So in that standpoint, yeah, money isn't enough. There isn't enough money in the world that can ever fill that void that my children feel of missing their father. However, there is a financial void too that comes from being a single mom. And from that standpoint, I have tried to do whatever I can do in order to make those ends meet. And it's not easy, because for you to also try to give your time to be there and also be there financially, sometimes one of those two things will suffer. For me, I always tried to have my own business where I was able to be present. But even in having your own business, there are things that you have to do in order for where the time is kind of taken away from you. Because whether you're packaging up orders or dealing with customers or whatever your business may be. At one point, I had a dog sitting business. The good thing about that is my kids were able to do that with me, and now they have a love for dogs that they didn't have before. But now that I'm not doing that, now that I'm in California and I'm renting this house and I can't have dogs in it, it's like, now what do you do? So I'm working outside of the house. But I'm still trying to do that balance of both providing and showing up emotionally. And I'm also fighting the guilt over resources versus presence. But I think it's good that my kids are older now. My daughter at this point needs to be going off to college. She's like 20 something. She'll be 21 in June. And I feel like at this point, it's like, all right, now it's time for you to start figuring out what you're going to do on your own. Because at 21, no, at 19, I had my own apartment. I was paying my own bills and all that. It's like now it's one of those things where I know kids kind of grow up a little bit later, especially with all the recessions and stuff that's going on. I probably expect her to be around the house at least for another 2 or 3 years, I'm thinking, before she kind of figures it out and starts making up money on her own. But after that, my youngest daughter, she's already trying to get out. I want to go a little bit deeper and say that there was a time where, even though I love being a parent now, there was a time where I was kind of self-conscious about being a parent. I started young. I was 20 when I first was married and getting lost in the sauce, as they say, with someone I probably shouldn't have ever been with to begin with. But I started going down that rabbit hole very early too, with the wrong person at the age of 14. But one of those things was I knew that I always wanted to be a parent, but I felt like my youth was kind of stolen from me because I didn't want to be a parent so young. But the person that I was with wanted me to be a parent very young. I hear a lot of talk about men being trapped by women, especially like basketball players or football players. They always say, oh, she trapped me. She trapped me with a baby. I feel like I was trapped with a child very early on. I was a situation where I was kind of told if I don't have a child by this person, they were going to leave me. And now as I've gotten older, I understand that those are those type of, what do you call those? Those are those ultimatums that you walk away from. But at the time I was young. I was like 19 and dumb, just dumb. Very naive, very naive. And unfortunately, I got put in a position where I was with someone who didn't really give a damn about me. They didn't give a damn about themselves, but they said they wanted to be a father. And my dumb self was like, yeah, okay, sure. If this what I need to do to keep you. And then that person wound up leaving a year after my daughter was born. So it's one of those things where I just felt like a dumbass for so long after that. I don't think I was able to forgive myself for falling for that. And even when I think about it now, it is triggering a lot of emotions in me where I'm just going to breathe through it. It's triggering a lot of emotions in me because I have to forgive that girl who was so young, who was so naive, to fall for that, to put her life on the line for someone who was just lost themselves, and then I wound up getting lost along the way, bringing a baby into the world, and then feeling even more lost. So I had a child in my early 20s, and I think I felt like my youth was kind of taken away from me. I felt like my youth was stolen. I had to put my dreams on hold, and parenting wasn't part of the original plan. But at the end of the day, I realized that I still had to lean into it. It was still a choice that I made. I still love my daughter. She was a beautiful daughter, and she still is. I just still don't think at the time I was ready. And for a very long time, I think I was still chasing after my youth. I consider myself one of those people that blossomed later in life. But I think it was mainly because I felt like I wasn't able to live in my 20s. And they always make it sound like your 20s are the best. And that's a lie. The 20s, at least for me, the 20s were my worst. It was figuring yourself out. And of course, for me, it was figuring myself out with a child and figuring myself out with a divorce and a schizophrenic ex-husband and abuse. I was going through so much and I didn't have therapy and I was trying to figure it out on my own and I had moved back home with my parents. It was just a lot. It was just a lot. But I think once I did go to therapy and I recognized that it was okay to grieve what I had lost and to still love myself regardless and to still be okay with loving the fact that I was a mother and early. And as I got older, the more I started to realize how thankful I was to have my kids early. Because one of my girlfriends always said to me, she was like, because she was in her 30s, and she would say, well, at least you have your kids. And I never really understood that, because I was thinking, well, at least you had your youth. Well, at least you had your chance. But now that I'm older, I'm actually thankful that I did have my kids younger, because now it's like, oh, they're almost grown and out of here, and now I can see the world. And now that that part is over, hopefully, I really love the fact that they're self-sufficient and I'm able to really enjoy myself now. But it all started with just accepting the fact that I didn't lose anything. I was just gaining myself that entire time. I was learning that entire time. And once I was able to put away the shame, put away the grief, and just be okay with being mom, my life became easier. And my love for my children became more and greater. And it took a long time for me to be okay with that, because I think it's because I was from Mississippi. And in Mississippi, you can start early and be okay. But then moving to California, this is Peter Pan land, and nobody out here is having kids, before they're 30. Everybody's living their lives. So I was kind of like, I was just not normal. At least that's what I was thinking in my brain. Like, this is not normal. I'm not normal. They don't consider me normal. Nobody's looking at this like this is normal. But at the end of the day, I realized it's okay to grieve what you lost and still love what you've gained. And what I lost, what I felt I lost, was my peace. But what I did gain was my sense was my motherhood. Was being a mom to two beautiful daughters, and my daughters are beautiful, so they're great daughters. Let's talk about breaking the cycle of what I would like to call generational curses. And a lot of that has to do with what happened in our childhood with our parents that we've decided we don't want to pass on to our own children, right? One of the big things for me is therapy. My children are in therapy now. And I think a lot of people think that that's unheard of, because they're like, well, what trauma have your kids been through? A lot of the things that we are dealing with as adults in therapy is undoing childhood trauma. So I feel as though if I can just help them deal with anything they even might consider traumatic at this point, if they can undo it now, can you imagine what they don't even have to do when they turn into adults? Because even for me, a lot of the stuff that I'm dealing with has to do with, me feeling like my parents weren't emotionally available. Me realizing that I never would have been with the schizophrenic guy had my dad sat me down and said, you know what, you can do better than that dude. If he had just said that, I respected him so much, I would never have done it. Not having a voice from being around emotionally unavailable parents, especially my father, So it's one of those things where if I can help them early, if even there's something that I have done that I didn't realize may have affected them, then I'm all for that. So for me, starting to even break down the cycle, breaking the generational curse starts with the therapy for me. It starts with allowing them to have their own boundaries. For my girls, I allow them to talk to me and I allow them to tell me how they're feeling. And, it's funny because I'm African American and, growing up in a Black household, it's one of those things where you don't talk back. You can't close your doors. There's no slamming doors around here. You better not raise your voice at me. I don't allow my kids to go off on me, but I do understand that there are times where they may be upset and they have to raise their voice a little bit. And I'm not mad at them for allowing them to express themselves in that way. There are times I get upset and I raise my voice. So how can I say to them, don't raise your voice at me? When I get upset, I'm raising my voice at them. So is having empathy for them, is allowing them to be human, it's allowing them to express themselves in ways I was not able to express myself. I told my daughter tonight, I allow you to talk to me and I allow you to tell me how you feel, because I felt as though as I got older, I did not have a voice. And I realized it started in childhood. I realized I wasn't allowed to speak up as a child. And as I got older, I was afraid to speak up for myself. But it started in childhood. So I never want my children to not feel as though they can speak up for themselves. I never want them to feel like they can't advocate for themselves, that they can't put down boundaries just because they're quote unquote children and aren't supposed to. Because you think that just because they turn 18 or just because they turn 21, all of a sudden some magic veil comes off and they're like, yeah, now I can speak up for myself. No, that's not how it works. You're literally training your child for 18 years not to talk back, not to tell you how they feel. You're basically making these kids be subhuman. They need to understand that they can have emotions, that it's okay to speak up, that it's okay to tell people how they feel. And that is, again, breaking the cycle. Okay? That is breaking the cycle. And then last but not least, one of the other things in terms of breaking the cycle and breaking the generational curse is being the best parent or that you can be by being who you are supposed to be. And by that I mean, I feel as though I haven't lived up to my full potential. And mainly it is because I've wanted to be the best parent for them. But I think I've also may have used that as an excuse. And the only reason why I say that now is because they're older. When they were younger, I definitely wanted to be there for them. They were younger, they needed me more. But now that they're older, I really have no excuse to go after what I want. I really have no excuse to go after my dreams, to go after my ambitions, to go after the things I said I always wanted to do. Now I need to figure out, are the things I said I always wanted to do what I really still want to do? That's what I'm trying to figure out now. And so with that, we're getting to the end of our podcast. And with that, I like to always give my future Nikki advice. If there was some advice that I could give to my future self, what would that be? And if there are some pointers or if there are some things that I could say to my future self, it would be this. I am proud of you. I am proud of you. And I want to mirror what Maya said to you tonight, which is thank you. Thank you for being a good mom. Whatever that looked like to you. There was a time where you were functioning, they call it functioning depression. There's a time where I was a functioning depressionist, I guess you might want to call it, where I had severe depression, but I was functioning very highly. I was laughing a lot. I was smiling a lot. I was joking. I was always joking. I was always making other people laugh. I don't even recognize that person going back, but it's so crazy to look at it because I was definitely a fool. I was definitely a clown, but I was hiding a lot of pain. And when I went back and thought about it after I got out of that, when I went to therapy and, these past 5 years, when I've gone back to look at it, and I asked myself, I said, during that time, was I emotionally available for my children? I wasn't emotionally available for myself. And so I wondered if during that time I had failed them, because I don't even remember a lot of that time. I know that my motive has always been to do well by them. So I can only imagine that I was just getting by and I was always still there. And when I talk to my kids, they say that I have been, but I do also wonder. I guess the good thing is they were young, so they don't know. But I also don't want that to be one of those things where, they were traumatized by something that I did or didn't do during that time, because I wasn't even available for myself. But I will say I'm proud of you for continuing to show up, because, I didn't have to, like my daughter said. I told her I did. I said, no, I had to. I was like, I made the decision to have you guys. So of course I had to show up. And she said, no, you didn't. You didn't have to show up. There are so many moms of my friends that I have seen not show up. So, excuse me. Sorry. All right. She said that there were so many of her friends who did not show up. So she's like, no, you could have chosen not to show up, just like they chose not to show up, but you continue to show up, and I want to thank you for that. So I'm going to take that. I'm going to take that as my own compliment. I'm going to give that to myself. I'm going to say thank you for continuing to show up. Also, I want you to know that during this time, you were not able to follow your dreams or follow the money or follow the success or follow Your success was not measured in money. Your success has been measured by your love and your consistency and the effort that you have put into your children. And they see that. And I have been blessed to have children who I talk to regularly on a very intimate basis where they can tell me anything. And that my daughter is so self-aware and mature. And she just basically said, there was never a time that I ever didn't want for something. Besides something trivial like some toys or something, she's like, there's never a time that I've gone without. And even though I have not had the most money, I have done very well with what I have had. There was a time where the last 4 years actually, I was able to save up a significant amount of money. That's why we've done so well the past 4 years. But that money's about to be up. And now it's going to be time for me to figure out what to do next. And I'm not scared. I'm not scared about that. I want to say, forgive yourself for anything that you couldn't give. Because what you couldn't give in money, you gave in hugs. You gave in love. You gave in reassurance. You gave in your presence. You gave in being there for your kids. And that's more than a lot of people can say, right? So I want you to celebrate what you did give. I want you to take heed and pat yourself on the back and really revel in the fact that you gave what a lot of parents are not able to because you made that your priority. And that says a lot about you. So I want you to be okay with that. I want you to know that you're a good parent. I want you to know that you're a good mother. I want you to know that you did everything that you could within your power to do that, and you did a great job. You have 2 beautiful children, and of course you could have did more for them, but you did the best you could do, and that's all anyone could ask. That's all anyone could ask. You did a pretty damn good job for someone who raised 2 kids by themselves. Okay. Now, is there advice for anyone else who's raising kids right now? Of course, I think for the main part, you should always do presence over perfection. You're not going to get it right. You're not going to get it perfect. I know I was just crying over not being perfect years ago when I was going through my depression, my high functioning depression where nobody knew I was even depressed, But I was still present for them in that. I was still there for them. I think that is very important to listen more than you lecture. I think it's very important for your kids to know that they're able to come to you with anything. I think it's important that you talk to your children, not at them. It needs to be a conversation. The way that I talk to my kids is like, they are my friends. I hate when parents say, I'm not your little friend. I am your friend. I am your friend. I'm your mom too. And you need to respect me as your mom. But I am also the person that I want you to come to when shit hits the fan. When something happens, I don't want you to be scared of me. And the way that can only happen is if they know that I am a safe space. Okay? Keep healing yourself so you don't parent from a place of fear or guilt. Don't be that person who, just because something bad happened to you when you were younger, you put it off on your child. Oh, well, this happened to me, so I can't let little Timmy, go play soccer because I don't want him to break his collarbone. Your children still need to understand that they have their own lives. They need to learn the way you did too. There are some stories I can tell my children and they're going to get it. And then there's also some things that's going to happen where they had to learn it for themselves. There was this case in point. There was this time where my oldest daughter came to me. She's like, oh my gosh, this guy just invited me out. And I was like, oh, interesting. Did he say where you guys are going? She was like, no, but don't worry about it. He doesn't even look like that type. And I forgot what he said, but he said something along the lines of like, hang out. That's what it was. He was like, let's hang out. And I was like, hang out don't sound good. Tell him to be more specific. And she's like, Mom, leave him alone. He's fine. He's a nerdy type. So I said, well, just ask him what he means by hang out. And then lo and behold, she asked him with a little sneer on her face. But then he goes like, come over to my place and, hang out, winky wink. And she was like, oh my gosh, gross. So in that moment, I could have told her. She decided not to listen. And I was like, fine, I'll let you figure it out on your own. So there are some things where you just need to allow your kids to figure it out. And then last but not least, I'll say it's okay to chase your dreams, even if it looks different once you're a parent. So for me, I didn't do film and television the way I really wanted to, but I did start producing podcasts. I did start doing like some social media things. I did start writing. I think it's important to do things that you're still interested in until maybe when your kids get older and you can get back into it, you know? If you're an artist, just start drawing. Start putting your stuff online. Like, it's okay to chase your dreams. And who knows? Your dreams may change. Like, even for me, like, the last couple of years, I've decided I wanted to do, like, therapy stuff. And so I decided to go back to school for therapy. Where before, it was always, I want to write. I want to produce. And if I had $1 million, I would produce a film tomorrow. You know, but I don't have that type of money. So for me, it's like, what does the next step look like? My dreams from when I was 19 aren't the same now. So what are these new dreams? It's going to take me some time to sit down and reflect, right? Anyway, at the end of the day, my daughter's gratitude showed me that kids see more than you realize, and they know when you choose them. My daughter tonight thanked me for putting aside my dreams to be more present for them. And her acknowledging my sacrifices made them all so worthwhile. It was like, you know, of course I would do this for you. I chose to have you. I wanted kids. I wanted to be there for you. And I'm glad she sees that. But I also realize now it's time for mama to kind of get back into things, you know, to get back into dating and loving and just moving on with life and her dreams and stuff. You know, I'm so glad they're older now because I can start doing those type of things. And final thought for you. You can do better too. You can do better than what you were given. Even if you're still healing yourself, you can still do better. Like, I've been healing for the past 5 years, and every day now I wake up with a smile on my face. And because I choose to. I choose to. Because what I realize is life is not about being perfect. It's about going with the flow. It's about taking what's given to you. It's about punching things as they come your way and still surviving and still saying, you know what? I did that. And patting yourself on the back and realizing like, okay, cool. It's not about the final destination. It's about the journey. The journey is fun. Getting to where you're going is fun sometimes. The trip, the traveling. Sometimes you get to where you're going. You're like, okay, this is it. Okay. Right? But if you just sit down and you enjoy the journey, if you enjoy the ride, if you look outside and you look out the window and you watch the trees and you see the birds and you watch the ocean waves, everything it took for you to get to your destination, right? That's where the beauty lies. That's where there's more to enjoy when you enjoy the journey, right? So at the end of the day, what it's really about is being present, is being loving, is being conscious in the moment and enjoying the journey. But next week, we are going to have a guest speaker come on. Somebody I actually met on Threads. Threads has been my new place of comfort lately. I'm a writer, so I love it. I am going to start doing a new Substack too. I've got to get that all down packed and together this next week, and I will make sure to be more on my P's and Q's when it comes to, you know, keeping our podcast weekly. But in the meantime, in between time, I would like to thank everyone for joining in. I would like to thank everyone for listening to my podcast, because there's a million places you guys could be, but you are here with me and I appreciate you. Until next week, I hope you have a good one, and I will see you next week. All right. Bye.
Thank you so much for joining me for another episode of Hello Me, It's Me with Nikki D. Lovely. Just remember, you can't change who you were yesterday, but you can always learn and grow to become a better version of yourself today. So make sure you do the mental work today for the future you tomorrow, and I will see you next week. And in the meantime, make sure that you check me out on my Instagram at Nikki D. Lovely. You can also find me at nikkidlovely.com and check out my book, No F Boys Allowed. Just a little shameless plug. But either way, I will see you guys next time, and thanks again.